Hi everybody, how are you doing? My name is Juan, I am just one reader, and welcome back to another evening of book reviewing. So tonight we will be covering books numbers 5, 6, and 7 that I have read so far in 2019, and those are The Ruby in the Smoke, The Harts Invisible Furies, and Vida Nostra. So, let's start. Let's start at the very beginning. A very good place to start. Firstly, let's talk about The Ruby in the Smoke. This is the first book in a series called The Sally Lockhart Mysteries. This was a series written by Philip Pullman. Philip Pullman is one of my favorite authors, and he is a very popular writer of children's fiction mainly, but not exclusively. He's mostly known for having written his Dark Materials trilogy, which is my favorite trilogy ever. And he has also written this series, the Sally Lockhart Mysteries series, which is a series of young adult Victorian thrillers. I read this series for the first time around 2004, 2005, so that was a long time ago. You do the math. And I was completely crazy about this book. Like, I was obsessed with Sally and the stories and the atmosphere and the writing. I thought Philip Pullman was such a genius of storytelling. And so now we are in 2019 and I have decided to reread the series. And I have reread the first one, and I am very, very happy to say that it did not disappoint. Of course, there were some things that I saw differently because my way of reading, my way of interpreting and looking at a text has changed over time. Naturally, it has developed, it has matured, and so my opinion of this book, of course, is different to what I originally thought way back when, but regardless of that, I was able to enjoy every single word of this book. So this book is a mystery novel, and it is a very suspenseful thrill ride. It's a roller coaster of a novel. It is filled with wonderful characters that, even though they might be a little bit cartoonish or caricature-esque, like we are characters in a novel, you can easily forgive that. I could easily forgive that because it is a YA novel, and it is the good kind of YA novel, and it's so well done, even though it is young adult, and I don't really like young adult fiction anymore. This is the good quality stuff. This is the good stuff. So the characters are wonderful, charming, so endearing, and you just love spending time with them. I really want to continue reading this series because of the characters, because I thought they were so enchanting and I completely fell in love with them. The story, as I said, is very, very enjoyable. It's very interesting. The atmosphere is so great. This is set in Victorian London, and it's just so grungy and so gritty and just, it's not like fancy London. It's like the underground, seedy London, and I thought it was just delicious and sort of slightly twisted, and I really, really enjoyed that. Let me check my notes. What else did I really like? Well, I really love how Philip Pullman really demonstrated that he is a master storyteller. A lot of people have problems with his Dark Materials trilogy because of the atheist, anti-religious subtext, but I think something that is completely undeniable is his ability as a very skilled storyteller. And I think that definitely comes through and shines through in this novel as well. His writing style is really beautiful for a YA book. It's really, really elaborate, and I thought it was really great. And the way that he constructs a novel is so simple but so elegant and so effective. Like, I was gripped, I was hooked from the very opening chapter. I was like, yes, I am so here for this. And I ended up reading this book in a day. It was so, so, so enjoyable and so entertaining. My only problem really with the book was that this is one of those young adult mystery novels in which everything is solved at the end and we receive all the answers at the end. There comes this character who is very mysterious, and this character provides all the answers to all the questions that have been posted throughout the book. And so there's this big exposition at the end, and it's kind of unrealistic and unbelievable. It's the kind of mystery that the reader could never solve by themselves. So yeah, that was a little bit but considering it was YA, this is really, really recommendable. I think this is the good YA that people should be reading. So in the end, I am giving The Ruby in the Smoke, Book 1 of the Sally Lockhart Mysteries by Philip Pullman, a 4 out of 5 stars, and from 1 to 10, I would give it 8.5. Next up, we have The Harts Invisible Furies by John Boyne. This is the story of a character called Cyril Avery. He is a gay man living in Ireland at the end of the Second World War, and he is a gay man and he has to come to terms with his sexuality, with his identity. He has to find his own voice, find his place in the world. This is very tough for him, almost impossible considering that he's living in Ireland, a country that is dominated by the Catholic Church, and his entire context is very religious and very strict and very much against his true nature. So the book is about his life, his journey through life. He meets a lot of great characters along the way. He makes a lot of choices along the way, some good and some incredibly bad choices as well. And that's pretty much it. This is one of those big, lengthy, but truly wonderful and enjoyable reads about a character's journey. It's a great character study. You feel like you are there with the character, like you are the character, and I think it promotes empathy greatly. I don't want to say a lot about this book in here because I have already done a separate in-depth book review about The Harts Invisible Furies, and so if you are interested in this book and what I have to say about it, I recommend that you go and watch that video. But what I will say in here is that I thought this book was just incredibly difficult not to love. I thought this book was absolutely irresistible, not just because of the characters. It's a big ensemble kind of book with a lot of characters, a big cast of characters, and they are all really, really great. But also the writing, the tone of the book is incredibly smart and playful. It is hilarious. It is a book about very, very harsh things. There's a lot of prejudice, violence, hatred, anger, discrimination, a lot of really awful things that happen in here, but everything has a sarcastic, comical, almost often hysterical turn, and I thought that was delightful. I found myself enjoying every single page of this book. I thought everything was just so funny and so light, but at the same time, it was a very ambitious novel about a lot of really dark subject matter, a lot of dark topics, and I think it was very successful. On the negative side, I did think that this book was a little bit too intense and too melodramatic and sentimental. I am not one for sentimentality and melodrama. So there were moments in here in which I just thought to myself, he took it a little bit too far. That was just a little bit too much for my taste. But I still really enjoyed it, and I would recommend it. If you want to know more about why I really loved this book and why I think everybody out there should read it, go and check out my video in which I talk about it in more depth. In the end, I am giving the Harts Invisible Furies by John Boyne a 4 out of 5 stars, but from 1 to 10, I am giving it a 9. And finally, we have Vida Nostra by Marina and Sergei Dyachenko. This is translated from the Russian by Julia Maitov-Hersey. This book is a book that a lot of people have been talking about and wondering about and sort of whispering about. This book came to my attention originally because of Matthew Sharapa. Matthew Sharapa is a great booktuber. I'm pretty sure everybody who's watching my videos watches his videos, but in case you haven't subscribed to his channel, please do so. He's a great and really knowledgeable booktuber and book reviewer. He really knows a lot about books, and he started talking about this book last year, and he loved it, and he went as far as claiming this book to be his favorite book of the year and of all time. And that, coming from Matthew Sharapa, that is like a big deal. And I think a lot of people started listening to him and started to wonder about this book. And I feel like this book is going to gain a lot of popularity. I feel like a lot of people are going to start reading this book very soon, and we're gonna start seeing this book in BookTube a lot more. So what is Vida Nostra about? Does it live up to the hype? What is it? What's the deal? Well, this is a very strange book. I find it really hard talking about this book. I finished it today, and I feel like I am on acid. I feel like I am not really grounded in reality. And that is completely because of this book. I spent the last week of my life in a sort of weird haze of uncertainty and woe and misery because of this book. For the life of me, I cannot properly tell you what this book is about. I just don't know where to start. I guess you could start by saying that this is a book about a character called Sasha, who is a 16-year-old girl living in Russia. And one day this weird, mysterious man comes along and offers her a place in this weird college, and she decides she's gonna take that offer, and she goes to that weird college that nobody has ever heard of, and she goes there, and that's pretty much where everything starts. Some people have been saying that this is like Harry Potter for adults, that this is like a magical school kind of book, but I heartily disagree. I strongly disagree with that statement. There is nothing magical about this book. There's no magic in this book. There's something weird in this book, yes, but it's not magic. I am pretty sure this does not classify as magic or fantasy at all. I don't know what it is, but I know it's not magic. It definitely is not Harry Potter. This book has also been compared to The Magicians by Lev Grossman, which is probably one of the worst books I've ever read, and a book that I hated very much. And Vida Nostra, I guess, is closer to the magicians than to Harry Potter, but it's not quite the magicians either. It's not there. It's neither here nor there. And I think this is why this book is great. This book is great because it is absolutely original. It is really, really different and special and unique. Did I love it? No, I did not love it. I liked it. I thought it was really impressive in some aspects. Overall, my rating is not going to be super high for this one because there were a lot of things that I thought were lacking and a lot of things that I thought were unnecessary. And overall, I did not enjoy myself. And I don't really think it's a really good novel. Like a big literary good novel. However, it deserves a lot of accolades and a lot of praise for how original it is. Really, there's nothing like this. I had never read a book such as this one. So, it's so hard for me to talk about this book. I guess I'm just gonna read you my notes, what I wrote down. These are my positives and my negatives. So, this book is a book in which characters are always learning. It's a book filled with homework and discovery and assignments and that kind of thing. And I think the entire book is a great allegory for learning, the learning process and what it is. Especially if you know a little bit about education and cognitive schema, how cognitive schema work in the brain neurologically, all these cognitive theories of Piaget, Vygotsky, etc. If you know a little bit of that educational psychology, cognitive psychology things, I think you will see a lot of that in this book. Also, I think something really positive for me was the atmosphere. The atmosphere is so dark and weird and oppressive and really difficult to picture. It's really strange. And again, it's great that a book can be so weird. I think it's just really great that a book can be so weird. On a personal level, I found that this book mirrored what becoming a psychoanalyst is for me. So the process of becoming a psychoanalyst is not your typical learning process. It's a process that requires a lot of theoretical knowledge, a lot of typical, reading and your usual learning process, I guess. But it requires something really weird and strange and different to other professions. It requires a sort of weird inner growth. It's like there's something inside of you all the time, and it's always changing, and it's always evolving, and sometimes it goes in very, very weird directions that you never anticipated. And that's something that this book also shows us. So I think that was very interesting. I identified with that aspect portrayed in this book. Ultimately, something else that I really enjoyed about this book is that everything feels so strange and so mysterious that you are always required to think, and you're always asked to have a conversation with the text. And it feels like really stressful and really frustrating at times because you want to understand what's going on and you want the answers. But the book really is more about learning and discovering about the uncertainty that you have inside, and slowly piecing the puzzle together. However, this book was not perfect. I enjoyed it, but I do not think it is a wonderful book. I do not think this is a book that I loved. This is a very difficult book to get into. It's very, very strange and off-putting, and at first I was tempted to DNF it because it was just not making any sense. So yeah, it's a book that will turn a lot of people off, certainly. This book is very long for what it is. I seriously thought it lacked a sense of direction. I thought there were some moments in which I was just like, so? I mean, what should I do with this? Not because the information was purposefully confusing or, you know, there's a lot of things that happen in this book that are confusing, but that are relevant. However, there was a lot of stuff in here that was just irrelevant, I found, and unnecessary. So the book was a little bit boring, a little bit too long for my taste. The characters were not compelling at all. Maybe some of the characters, some of the teaching staff at this weird college was interesting, but the characters never really got to me. This is a serious criticism for me. The book has no joy. This book is really depressive and moody and broody, and just look at the cover. Everything is black. This cover is so bad, by the way. It's so tacky and so generic and mediocre, and this book is not mediocre or generic at all. So the people who did this cover, really bad job. So yeah, this book had no joy. The book was just really depressive, and I think that is completely deliberate and intentional from the authors, but I just never really enjoyed myself while reading this book, and that's a big deal for me. So in the end, when I finished reading this book, I was left with a weird aftertaste in my mouth. I thought it was really impressive. I thought it was original and creative and strange and absolutely bizarre. It is bizarre. However, I don't know if I would read the second book in this series. I don't know how invested I really am or was. I don't know. It's a book that is hard to process, and I feel like it's a book that I will need to keep thinking about quite a lot before I actually start realizing how I truly felt about it. But as of right now, I am giving Vida Nostra by Marina and Sergei Dyachenko a 3 out of 5 stars, and from 1 to 10, I would give it a 7.5. That's it. Thanks for joining me for another evening of book reviews. I am just one reader, and I will see you on the next video.